It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to Series 25, looking at the players of Euro 2024. This episode is looking at the players of Slovakia. Here we go. Hello and welcome again to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. I'm Kevin and we continue Series 25 on the groups and players of the 2024 Euro Cup. This episode covers Slovakia's players. In fact, it's part 2 of the Players Mediacast. And here we look at the selections. In part 1, we made a list of the candidates and introduced them and their likelihood of making the squad. And there is a link to that part 1 in the show notes. Part 2 here will be divided into 2 sections. In section 1, we will look over the list we compiled in part 1 to see who made it and who didn't. And in section 2, we summarize the surprises in the selection and we review injuries. Let's begin then, or we have a couple of orders of business just before we move to section 1. The first is my shirt. I'm wearing my default Euro shirt, which kind of has some of the colors of Slovenia in there. Okay, not the dark blue of their flag, but their shirt has some lighter blue in that, and that is my claim. That is my connection. The second order of business is their preliminary squad. Slovakia put out a 32-man preliminary roster on May 27th, and that was reduced to the required 26 players on June 7th. So we have 32 players to talk about here, but 6 of them will be cut. Also, I just want to mention the 2 warm-up games they had, 4-0 wins over San Marino and Wales. It looks like the first one was giving a run out to a lot of the bench slash substitute players. There are a couple of players who played twice, but not many. We do believe that the game against Wales represents more their starting lineup. So we'll mention that as we go through. And let's begin with section 1 and the candidates. So we start with the manager. Just let me find my spot here. Yes, Francesco Quezona is the manager. He doesn't have any tournament experience, and he is going to lead them through the tournament. So we'll call him a selected player, as it were. Okay, let's go to goalkeepers. We had 2 players at the definite level. That's Martin Dubravka and Marek Rodak. Each of them started one of the warm-ups, but it was Dubravka against Wales. Again, we think that's the starting lineup. The likely candidate, Heinrich Ravas, was also selected. And we had a possible but unlikely candidate in Dominik Takac, and he was selected, but only for the preliminary squad. So he was one of the 6 players cut. I'm just going to pause here to clear my throat. Okay, there we go. A nice, brighter, clearer Kevin for you. Moving on to the defense, we look at central defenders here. We had 3 definite candidates. The first was Captain Milan Skriniar, and he was selected. Denny Vavro, also selected, and Norbert Bjomber, the third definite candidate. All 3 of them selected there. No likely candidates here, meaning candidates at the likely level for us. But we do have 4 possible candidates. The first one, Lubomir Satka, is not selected for the squad, and in fact an injury may play a role in that decision. We'll talk about that in section 2. And I might as well look at our bottom candidate, Thomas Nemchik, because it's the same situation for him, not selected and an injury perhaps playing a role. However, our 2 middle candidates there, Adam Obert and Sebastian Kosa, both of those selected for the final squad. All right, we move on to left backs. We have a definite candidate in David Hanko. Oh, hang on, I just want to go back and talk about the starters in the warm-up game. So we had in the first game, Skriniar and Gyomber, and in the second game, it was Skriniar and Vavro. So Skriniar, one of the few players to start both games. And again, not solid evidence, but kind of hinting that Vavro will be the starting partner there. Okay, let's continue with the left back. So we have definite candidate David Hanko, and he was selected. So was likely candidate Vernon DeMarco. Those are the only two candidates on our list, and they both made it. In the games, we have DeMarco starting the first one and Hanko starting the second. We had thought Hanko the more likely starter there. Okay, on to right backs, and we had no definite candidates, but two likely ones. The first was Peter Pekarik. Peter Pekarik was selected, and Michael Tomic. Michael Tomic was selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. An injury might have had a role in that. We also had a possible candidate, Matthews Komet, and he, like Tomic above, also just made the preliminary squad, but not selected for the final squad. So just one right back there coming into the cup, and Pekarik, unsurprisingly, then played both of the warm-up games as the right back. Okay, on to defensive midfield, and we have. Yes, we have really no viable candidates as defensive midfielders, just one retired player on our list there. So we go on to central midfield, and we have Stanislav Lobotka as a definite candidate, and he was selected. Likely candidate, Patrick Hrosovsky, also selected for the squad, and then three possible candidates. The first one, Matus Bero, was selected, and so was the second one, Thomas Rigo. The third one, however, Dominic Hawley, was selected for the preliminary squad, but was one of the players cut. And so too with the possible but unlikely candidate, Jacob Kadak. So at least getting on the preliminary squad there, but not making the final cut. Let's take a look at the central midfield in the warm-ups, and we have Hrosovsky playing a stopper role in a 4-1-4-1 formation in the first game. Rigo was one of the two central attacking midfielders ahead of him. And in the second game, again, what we think is a starting lineup, Lobotka in the middle of a three-man midfield in a 4-3-3 formation. And it's going to be attacking players in the left and right midfield role there, also as one of the central midfielders in the first game. So we'll look at those attacking players as we go forward. In fact, we did make a category for left midfielders. I think that was because they play the 4-3-3 position as formation quite a bit there. So left midfielders, we have a definite candidate in Andre Duda, I'm sorry, and then and he was selected, and a likely candidate in Laszlo Benez, and those are two of the names we see, each starting the warm-up games once. That's it for left midfielders. They, of course, missed the retired Marek Hamsik there. And right midfield, we have Juraj Kuka as a definite candidate who was selected, and he was the only viable candidate there. So, yes, going back to the warm-up games, that's exactly how it was in the in the warm-up games. Benez started the first game, suggesting to us at least that he's more of a substitute, and Duda as the left midfield and Kuka as the right midfield, looking more like the starting lineup to us there. On to left attackers. So in the 4-3-3, this would probably be the left forward position. And we have Lucas Harrislin, who was selected. And perhaps the biggest surprise here, Robert Mack, not selected at all. I'll come back to that and just mention that two possible players were selected ahead of him, Leo Sawyer and Lubomir Tupta, both of those possible candidates selected. It's thought that Robert Mack's non-selection was not really a surprise to people intimate with the team. Robert Mack is playing for Sydney FC in Australia, so kind of off the European radar. And furthermore, he's not scoring that much for them. So he is left out of the squad, despite being a likely candidate for us here. And two possible players pushed ahead of him. As far as the warm-up games go, Harrislin was one of, I think, 3 players to actually start in both games there, as a winger in the first and a left forward in the second. Okay. Sorry, I said central midfielders there. What was I talking about? That was the left attacking position, and Harrislin did play on the left in both of those games. Okay, now we go to right attacking position, and we have oh, I got lost in my script here. Okay, we have Thomas Suslav as one of 2 likely candidates. He was selected. So was the other one, David Duris. And then we have a possible candidate in Ivan Schrantz, or perhaps Ivan Schrantz. He was selected. However, our possible but unlikely candidate, Eric Jurka, not selected there. And looking at the warm-up games, it was Suslov in the first one against San Marino, and Schrantz starting the second one. So we would have expected that actually to be reversed. But again, it's not necessarily set in stone that Schrantz would be the starter, but it does kind of up his chances in our estimation. Okay, on to attacking midfielders, central attacking midfielders, and we don't have any. Okay, so over to forwards we go, or up to forwards we go, and we have a definite candidate in Robert Bozanek, who was selected for the squad, and possibly the second surprise here, Robert Polievka, our likely candidate, selected only for the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut there. Rather, it was the possible but unlikely candidate, David Strelec, selected. And we'll finish section 1 here by looking at the warm-up games. So it is possible but unlikely candidate David Strelec starting in the first game against San Marino, and then Bozanek starting the second game against Wales, further confirming that the second game looks more like the starting lineup there. All right, that's it. Those are the candidates. Let's go to section 2 and kind of review the surprises there. So we begin with Michael Tomic, and an injury is involved there, so we'll talk about it below. But he was not selected despite being a likely candidate there. And Robert Mack, doesn't seem like injury is part of the story there. He is actually coded as a right midfielder, but he was playing as a left attacker during the period that we looked at. Michael Tomic is a right back. Anyway, but Robert Mack also a likely candidate, but not selected. The third one is Robert Polievka, and he is a forward who we also considered a likely candidate, but was not selected. Both he and Tomic were selected to the preliminary squad and did not make the final cut. Also, just for those who may be curious, Marek Hamsik, no longer part of the squad. He is retired from soccer altogether. He did play actually 2 of the games at the start of 2023 and has not appeared since then. So we're not going to see him at the tournament. Surprise inclusions. Well, at the expense of Robert Polievka, we have the David Strelec, the forward. We had him as a possible but unlikely candidate, but it seemed like he took that position. And sorry, I put him in the new players category, but he's a surprise inclusion. New players, we didn't have any for Slovakia, so no new names brought in there. And let's move on to update the injuries. So we talked about Michael Tomic. We're assuming we're assuming that injury did play a role in his non-selection because he was a likely candidate, out with a muscle injury from mid-May and an unknown return date. So it looks like he didn't make it back in time. The other injuries we have are for players at the possible level or below, so they weren't strong candidates for making the squad, and we don't know to what degree the injury played a role in them not being selected. So we have central defender Lubomir Satka. He was a possible candidate, out for ankle surgery since early April and wasn't expected back until June 30th, which would have been too late for the tournament. But what I mean is that we're not sure he would have been selected had he been healthy, even though he was a starter in their 2020 Euro Cup campaign. So the injury probably playing at least some role in that decision. The other one is Thomas Nemchik, also a central defender. He was out with an unknown injury since late May and an unknown return date. That could be a recurrence of a hamstring injury that put him out from late April to mid-May. He came back for one game for his club and then was injured again. But in this case, we really don't know if the injury was the reason or whether he would not have been selected anyway. All right, that brings us to the end of Slovakia. We hope knowing the players a little better helps you enjoy watching them in the tournament a bit better. Good luck to Slovakia. We would like to thank Mike Tripak, Big Sound Music, and Pixabay for the wonderful background music called Dance 90s accompanying this mediacast.